to Israel this week. First for the medical teams, then for the elderly people. I think around 100,000 vaccination would come this week. We are 9 million people, so that's a big number for us. And the rest would come throughout this month and the next month. So probably by March, April, almost everybody would be vaccinated, and hopefully we would be able to welcome groups again. So far, foreigners are still not allowed in Israel, but we are following closely, and hopefully this will change sometime soon. Another interesting news from the UAE and Israel peace agreement is that yesterday, one of the big families in the UAE brought a football team from Israel. The Beitar Jerusalem football team is now owned by the Emirates, and these are things that we could only dream of a few months ago. So that's all for the updates, and I would like to pass on the mic to Ruven, who would be our main speaker for today, taking note of the new sites, because I think it's very important to renew and refresh our itineraries, especially after the COVID crisis will end. People would like to come back to Israel, people of faith, that it would be probably the first destination they would consider. And if we can give them some new sites that they don't know and they have never heard before, it will give us an edge over the competition, because always new stuff is more interesting. So thank you very much, Ruben. On to you.
Thank you very much, Yinon, our dear friends from the nations. Always good to see you on Zoom, and always looking forward to see you in live. I see that Yinon and Ibrahim already went ahead and showed us and shared the screen with our PowerPoint for today. So again, what we'll do today is take a quick look over the coast, the western coast of Israel along the Mediterranean. And we'll just start from the south and take you through a few points of interest all the way to the northern part of Israel. As you know, look at the topographic map right below this slide. And you remember that Israel is a narrow, beautiful coastal piece of land laying along the Mediterranean, which is called the Great Sea in the scriptures. So the Mediterranean is on the west side of Israel, and you see in this topographic map, and most of the Shfela, as we call it in Hebrew, Shfela would be the coastal plains and the low hills that would be up to 20, 30 miles along the coast, reaching toward the mountain ridge in the heart of Israel, which of course are the mountains of Samaria, the mountains of Judea, what is politically considered the West Bank. That's where we have most of the Palestinian population dwelling, together with about 500,000 Israelis in the Israeli communities. Usually and normally a very robust and fruitful coexistence. And then, of course, you drop down to the Jordan Valley, which separates and divides between the Sea of Galilee and the Dead Sea in the south. And today we'll take a look along the coastal plains. Let's start from the south, along the coast of Israel, which, of course, by the way, is a beautiful, beautiful beach country. Oftentimes, when we think about our Palestinian friends, for example, those who are still in Gaza, under the oppressive rule of the Hamas party, they could have the same prosperous beach properties for tourism and commerce as we do in Israel. The same conditions, the same topography, the same weather. So let's start with our first southern city of Ashkelon. Ashkelon is the closest large Israeli city to the Gaza Strip. So by the way, if you do catch the news once in a while that there's a little bit of a tension along the southern border of Israel, oftentimes it would be in the area of Ashkelon. Those are very quick flashpoints. They usually last and disappear within hours or minutes. They rarely ever impact tourism, and so not to worry about security. Ashkelon itself is coming from the Hebrew word shekel. Some of you may remember that word from your coming to Israel, and you have to exchange some money into local currency. So you exchange your dollars or local Indonesian currency into the Israeli shekel, which is the biblical term for Israeli currency. That's what the word Ashkelon comes from. It is an ancient city, has been one of the largest ancient ports along the Mediterranean. And of course, the history of Ashkelon, as most cities in Israel, goes all the way back to the Canaanite season. The Philistines used it at one of their chief cities. It appears in the scriptures. And a visit to Ashkelon would be very unique because frankly, it is not a very well marketed site for most tourists in Israel, and yet it offers fantastic views. Yeah, it will never have any lines in terms of standing in line to see the holy sites or the unique archaeological digs that you will see in these pictures, and always pleasant weather. So Ashkelon, on the very southern border of Israel, about 10, 15 miles north from the Gaza Strip, will be our first point. If you look to the next city, again, we are moving north along the coast of Israel. About 20 miles north from Ashkelon, you run into the city of Ashdod. Ashdod today is home for Israel's largest commercial seaport. Nearly 60% of our commercial goods are passing through Ashdod. We have a number of seaports, but the largest one is in Ashdod. Actually, I was there not too long ago, before the pandemic hit the world. I happened to be a couple of years ago on a cruise through the Mediterranean, and it did stop in the port of Ashdod. And so a very large, prosperous Israeli city. And of course, just like Ashkelon to the south, Ashdod has a rich and varied history. Many of our groups, we would recommend them to spend a night in Ashdod. For one thing, it's very nice for the tourists to see the coastal plains of Israel, the beautiful beaches, modern city. It is the sixth largest city in Israel today. And while it lays on the coast with a lot of modern amenities, it presents very rich, beautiful history. Just like Ashkelon, it has a Canaanite history. The Philistines used it as one of their chief cities. It is mentioned in the Bible, so it has biblical history. Of course, the Israelite kingdom took over it. It was assigned to the tribe of Judah, and it was contested between the Philistines and the king of Judah for many years. The Babylonians took over the place. Alexander the Great took over it. The Romans came through. The Ottomans came through. The Turks came through. And then Israel came through. And we recaptured the territory back in 1949 during the War of Independence. And so it is a very beautiful coastal city. And that is, by the way, the place for the biblical story that many of your groups and your pilgrims will remember about the Ark of the Covenant, how the Ark of the Covenant was captured by the Philistines. You remember that story? They took it to their main city of Ashdod. They placed it in the temple of Dagon, one of their main pagan Philistine deities, a Canaanite deity. And of course, the Lord warned them. Every morning, the priest would come into the temple, and their god statue of Dagon would be on its face, falling down. And eventually, they shipped the Ark of the Covenant back to Israel, where it was kept safe, not too far from where I live today, in Kiryat Yearim, outside of Jerusalem, until King David restored it and brought it back to Jerusalem. Ashdod, a beautiful city, lots of history, perfect spot to have a group stay overnight. We held some of our conferences there. Some of our groups that are coming to Israel for a worship event or a teaching event enjoyed time in Ashdod, and we would highly recommend to pay attention to this. As you move north along the coast, the next large metropolitan area on the Mediterranean coast, of course, is Tel Aviv Jaffa. Jaffa would be the ancient element of the city, and Tel Aviv would be the newest Hebrew Israelite modern city that was built right north to Jaffa. Today, they are one municipality. It's called Tel Aviv Jaffa. They have one mayor, they have one administrative hub, and it is the largest hub population-wise, as a metroplex goes, of Israelis laying along the Mediterranean coast. In fact, personally, my own family's history in Israel started in Jaffa. My grandfather and grandmother came to Israel exactly 100 years ago. and they fled the persecution of the Jewish communities in Western Russia. Grandpa put grandma on a boat to Jaffa, and she lived in Jaffa for 1 year, renting a room from an Arab landlord, while my grandpa came walking. He walked to Israel from Russia. I think I told you the story before. He walked for 1 whole year. He crossed from Russia into Turkey, from Turkey into Syria, from Syria into Lebanon, from Lebanon into the Galilee. And then he walked along the coast to Jaffa. And a year after he put grandma on a boat, he met her back in Jaffa. And that was the beginning of my family's history in the land of Israel, right here in Jaffa, Tel Aviv. The little statue that you see there is, of course, our first prime minister, David Ben Gurion. This is a funny little statue of him standing on his head because he was known to do headstands every day on the beach as part of his early morning exercise. And the city, of course, today contains a beautiful combination of the ancient and the new, the historic and the modern. It is the main hub for Israeli business and finance. It is the head of our Pentagon, the Israeli version of our Pentagon. And myself, I'm a native of Tel Aviv, so this is home for me. Whenever we drive down to be along the coast or in the big high rises that you see in the picture, I feel at home. Many of our groups, upon landing in Israel, we would oftentimes recommend to start the trip along the coast somewhere, whether it was Ashdod, Ashkelon, Tel Aviv, or you can see the next city along our presentation, which would be Herzliya. Herzliya is about 20 miles north from Tel Aviv. The pictures on your screen will show some of the ancient spots that Herzliya has to offer. But of course, today, Herzliya is a very modern, high-tech business hub, laying, as I said, about 15, 20 minutes north from Tel Aviv on the main coastal highway. It actually is a home for a number of foreign embassies. It has some beautiful high-end executive neighborhoods, and yet Herzliya, which is called, by the way, the name Herzliya is a derivative of the Hebrew word Herzl, and you might remember that name. Theodore Benjamin Herzl was the visionary, the visionary and the founder, the philosophical father of the modern state of Israel. He was the European Jewish secular. He was not Orthodox, but there was deep faith burning in his heart. And he's the first one who gathered together representatives of Jewish communities from all around the world into the first international Jewish conference in Basel, Switzerland. And in his own words, he carved the vision to bring the Jewish population from around the world back to Israel. And so he's the father of the state of Israel, and this little city, which is not so little today, was named after Benjamin Theodore Herzl. Herzliya has some beautiful history as well. And what you see in these pictures is actually the Apollonia temple remnants. This is a temple that goes back to the Canaanite period. It had a deep Phoenician history. Obviously, like the rest of our large coastal cities, it went through many occupiers, whether the Philistines, the Israelites, the Romans, the Greek, Alexander the Great, and then the Ottomans. The city went through many, many millennia and centuries of occupiers until Israel established it as its own community. It started as a small village, actually as an agricultural village back in 1924, and had grown to a beautiful high-end and high-tech metropolitan area just 15, 20 minutes north from Tel Aviv on the coast of Israel. Highly recommended for groups to stop by and spend the night, or at least stop by for visits, because these sites are not on the normal, I would say, pilgrim routes, and yet they offer unique views of Israel, both past and present. The next large city on the coast would be Netanya. Netanya is about 20 miles further north along the coast of Israel. As you can see in the picture, the beach front in Israel, all along the Mediterranean. We have about 200 miles of gorgeous beaches. Most of them are developed. Most of them are usable in terms of people that can freely go to the water. Most of the areas have lifeguards assigned to them, and those that don't are clearly marked as such. And Netanya has actually been the site of Sarel's first hotel, and that's the hotel in the picture in front of you. Um, we invested and bought the Ramada Hotel and Suites that is on the beachfront in Netanya. Many of the groups that we host in Israel start their trip right in Netanya, right at that hotel. It is a beautiful beachfront hotel. It is one of those high towers that you see in the picture above, and it presents fantastic views of that kind of a coastline. So imagine coming to Israel, you land at the international Ben Gurion airport, which is about 30 minutes away from Netanya, and as traffic flows. And your first experience, your first night, instead of going up north or going down south, you go to the coast, which is about the shortest run from the airport, and you spend the first evening with this view for your pilgrims. You start with the beautiful history of Israel while enjoying the modern amenities. Netanya. The beautiful name, too, is taken out of two Hebrew words, Natan, Yah. Two Hebrew words. Yah, as you all may remember from your biblical studies, it is one of the short names from God, from the name Yahweh, Yehovah, Jehovah. So Yah would speak to God's name, and Natan means given. So the name Natanya means God's given. A commercial and beautiful hub, commercial and tourist hub right along the coast of the Mediterranean. Keeping moving north, you're going to run right into the famous site of Caesarea. And I know that many of you would recognize that Caesarea is on the pilgrim route. Most of Christian groups, if not all of them, who come to Israel will make it a point to stop at Caesarea. And of course, this is an incredible site with so much that King Herod invested in and built 2,000 years ago is still standing pretty much intact, including this great big amphitheater that you see in the top left picture. It is actually being used. This amphitheater is being used for live shows, concerts, worship events, teaching events. We are hosting many events there for some of our international conferences and events that we are producing here in Israel for Christian groups and institutions. And so if you haven't been to Caesarea, you have to add it to your itinerary. Great history, and of course, much of its known history is right in the Bible. It is mentioned in the book of Acts. This is the place where Paul the apostle was imprisoned for a couple of years. That's where Peter the apostle made his first serious presentation of the gospel to a non-Jewish audience. As you remember in Acts in chapter 10, God gave Peter a vision on the rooftop in Jaffa. He received the messengers that came from the Roman career officer from Caesarea. And sure enough, Peter, the Jewish apostle, shows up in a Roman officer's home, which was contrary to Jewish traditions and to biblical instructions. But they basically, two men who both of them were out of the box, joined together to bring the gospel for the first time to a non-Jewish audience. And it was in Caesarea that the great gates opened wide and the gospel began to be proclaimed to non-Jewish audiences. And so it went all over the world until it reached you right there today in your living room, in your office, wherever you are. It all started in Caesarea, the first time that a Jewish apostle spoke the good news of Messiah, the gospel of Christ, to a non-Jewish audience was in Caesarea. And so we love to take groups there. And of course, the bottom picture is the famous aqueduct. That's how the Romans brought in water from many, many miles away from springs up on the slopes of the Carmel mountain range. The water was brought to Caesarea on this beautiful aqueduct, an engineering wonder that was built more than 2,000 years ago. Next, along the coast, is the site of Atlit. Not much known for non-Israelis. Of course, we in Israel know Atlit very well. It has a rich history in the modern state of Israel. And if you're in the area, we would always recommend take your group there and let our guides take you through a good 20, 30, 40-minute visit of Atlit. It is right on the way along the coast. It doesn't take much time, but it brings in a major piece of Israel's modern history simply because, in a nutshell, Atlit was the site where the where the British forces that occupied the land of Israel, or as it was called historically for a while, Palestine, while the British mandate was ruling over the Middle East between World War One and World War Two, they established an open prison in Atlit to house the Jewish immigrants that were trying to make Aliyah, that were trying to make immigration back to the homeland. Remember, we talked about Herzl earlier. The vision began to catch fire. The word was out. Jewish communities began to move themselves, families, people like my father, like my grandfathers and grandmothers, they began to come to Israel. And the British, for a while there, weren't too happy about it. They started friendly, they ended up not too friendly, and they actually established one of their largest prison camps in Atlit. And you can see the remnants of this with the houses, the housing facilities, and the barbed wires. And here in the bottom, one of the pilgrim ships that brought in Jewish pilgrims. They were illegal pilgrims because they came in contrary to British policies who wanted to keep the land unoccupied by Jews. And yet Jewish pilgrims began to come in, and those which the Brits caught were put into those camps, were imprisoned in those camps for a while, and then shipped out of Israel back to larger camps in the island of Cyprus. Some of you know the story. You might have seen the movie Exodus. It speaks about this entire turbulent season in the history of Israel. And this really is one of the main pieces of history that you can offer to your group when you travel along the western coast of Israel. Atlit will etch a memory and a story in the mind of your groups and your clients, like very few sites in Israel, and they will never forget it. Highly recommended. Atlit, right south from the city of Haifa, along the coast of Israel. And if you keep moving north, you run right into our beautiful coastal city of Haifa. If you look at the next slide, we only picked a couple of famous pictures. Of course, on the left side is the famous Baha'i Gardens. As you know, the Baha'i is a small religion that has anchored itself in Israel, as many others have. It is the holy land for a number of religions, including the Baha'is. The founder of the Baha'i is buried in the city of Akko. We will see that in the next slides. But their main temple and gardens are in the city of Haifa. And that's the left-hand side picture on this slide. Beautiful place to visit, unusual. You would hardly find anything like that anywhere around the world. And with the beautiful sight of the Mediterranean right behind it, and you can see the port. This is Israel's largest large size commercial port. Actually, this is the main port for our Navy as well. So if you travel down by Haifa, you can oftentimes catch a sight of some of our new Navy vessels. Israel just invented in a few new vessels, both for warfare above and below the waters. And so once in a while, you can catch a glimpse of that in the Haifa port. But the city itself is a beautiful mountainous city, resting upon the slopes of the Carmel mountain range, which of course has rich biblical history. That church that you see in the center of the picture, the Stella Maris Church, is the foundation church for the Carmelites order of a religious Christian order that founded itself in Haifa. And of course, the whole church, Carmelite, as you can hear by the name of it, has to do with a story associated with the Carmel mountain range and the story of Elijah and the prophetic ministry that brings down fire from heaven. A lot of that is mentioned in that famous Stella Maris um, church, and the city itself is a beautiful site to visit. I think that you have a couple of other pictures in the next slide, also from the Haifa region. And again, many of our groups will make it to those spots. If you can switch the picture, please, Ibrahim. The next one is talking about other sites on the Carmel mountain range, which is all around Haifa city. And we highly recommend, if you haven't taken groups there, please do. Not only is it a beautiful mountain range, it's a small mountain range resting right along the Mediterranean coast. And many people who come to Israel instinctively think that they're going to spend all of their time in arid places, desert places, in the wilderness of Judea or the Negev, and they are absolutely flabbergasted to see the beauty of the land. And much of it is depicted in the Carmel mountain range. The very word Carmel is taken out of two Hebrew words, Kerem El, Carmel. Two words, Kerem El, the orchard of the Lord, the orchard of God. And that's why the ancients called it, that the area was as beautiful as God's own orchard, God's own garden, Kerem El. And of course, in the top left picture, you'll see the statue of Elijah the prophet raising up his sword, ready to slay hundreds of pagan false prophets of Queen Jezebel. And you remember the occasion. This is the famous Muhraka observation point. I would recommend every Christian group that comes to Israel, every person of faith, highly recommended to work your way up to Haifa. Many of our groups work their way there. Not only the sights and the landscape is beautiful and inspiring, but you go to this point, which is traditionally where Elijah the prophet brought down fire from heaven and restored the fear of the Lord to the backslidden nation of Israel at the site that is called Muhraka on top of the Carmel mountain range. Next picture, if you go around the Mediterranean, the port of Haifa, and you keep moving north along the Mediterranean coast, the next city up north is the city of Akko. I know that some of you probably were there, but most of you probably were not. And yet we highly recommend the city of Akko. Is just like 20, 30 minutes north from Haifa. So it is right on the northern tip of the Haifa famous bay. You can see the bay, the northern end of it in the bottom picture. It is an ancient city that has a lot of history. Akko is mentioned in the Bible and probably has its most noticeable history that can be visited until today would be the Crusaders' castles that are still standing intact until these days. These became some of the British forces in Israel used them as some of their military barracks, but the actual structures go back 1,000 years or so, and they commemorate Crusaders' activity and occupation of the Holy Land, rich history, Muslim history, Christian history, Jewish history, Canaanite history, Phoenician history, and everything culminates in a beautiful city along the coast. And as you can see, the ancient city of Akko in the bottom picture is a sight to see. If your group is traveling along the Mediterranean coast, it's not a long ways from Haifa. If you had lunch, let's say around the area of the Carmel, and you spend some time in prayer and looking into the scriptures pertaining to Elijah and the story of him confronting the priests and the prophets of Baal on the Carmel mountain range, it is a 20, 30 minutes drive, and you are in the ancient city of Akko with another beautiful coastal experience for your groups. And if you keep moving north from Akko, and again, we are almost to the most northern spot on the state of Israel, right As you remember, on the south of Israel, there's Egypt, and of course, the small enclave of the Gaza Strip. But north from Israel, along the coast, is the country of Lebanon. It's been in the news recently a few times, and we hope that they are rebuilding after their disasters there. But Lebanon is a beautiful country resting right along the coast. We pray and anticipate and hope to God that we will have peaceful relations with Lebanon as well one of these days, so pilgrims and tourists can travel freely back and forth, because the coastline that connects Israel to Lebanon is gorgeous. And Rosh HaNikrah, which is the name of this particular site, is the most northern spot in Israel, right on the Lebanese border. There are beautiful sea phenomena where the sea dug into the soft rocks, and so you have inner, under the mountain type waterways that you can actually travel through. The cable car will take you up to the mountaintop and bring you down to the caves where you can enjoy fantastic views. Next time we should show you a picture or two of those beautiful waterways where travelers and pilgrims can see some of the most fantastic geological phenomena right on the coastline, as north as you can get to Israel. The famous train between Beirut and Jerusalem used to go right in a cave right by this site, Rosh HaNikrah. The cave is still there, the train tracks are still there. They're just waiting for a peace agreement to be signed, and we'll have a train running through there again. Well, friends, this is the coastline of Israel, all the way from the southern city of Ashkelon, that is by the Gaza Strip, all the way to Rosh HaNikrah on the northern border with Lebanon. The coast of Israel is beautiful, as you can see from those pictures, and offers absolutely fantastic views, history, archaeology, Bible stories, and a lot of Israel's modern history is on display. We highly recommend, consider it for your next trip. Back to you, Stephen. Back to you, Ibrahim. God bless you all from Jerusalem.
It's great. Thank you so much, Ruben. It's it's amazing coastline. I think it's so beautiful there. And thank you also for sharing your family story, and what an incredible story that is. 1 year walking from Russia all the way to, wow, there must be some journey. But anyway, I'll leave it. I think Ibrahim may have some extra about maybe packages or something like that.
Yeah, sure. So everyone, I hope you enjoyed our presentation about with this journey. The Mediterranean coast is rich of historical and sites that you may visit. Some of the sites is free of charge, that you can have your groups, and if you also want to experience, for example, a visit in a kibbutz. A kibbutz is a community that live together, and you can do a kibbutz tour with your groups, see what they are living from. Some of them is planting trees and all this stuff of milking, and they live together, and they still have the dinner together, feasts together, some of old style. So it's a minimum rate, minimum price, but you can join the whole experience with your groups. Even do some activities with your own hands. So it's very highly recommended. And if you need any of these sites to be in your itinerary, so you need just to mention it to Lisa or to Stephen or to Sarah Tours, and we'll be happy to add it on the route that you can enjoy it. I would like to encourage you that we are working hardly with the hotels for 2021 about the rates. We're trying our best to pull the rates down to help you guys to sell your packages with reasonable rates. We know that not only us as a tour agents and you, we know also the people. Some of them is unemployed, and they may have few income. So we do understand the situation. We are pushing the hotels to give us better rates, so you can plan your next tour with reasonable rates. So we will helping ourselves by helping you. And I really hope that next year, 2021, will be better than 2020. We can see the light at the end of the tunnel with the vaccine. And I think that slowly with the faith and we need to encourage ourselves that 2021 will compensate us, not the year, but God. We will compensate us as He promised us that He will be beside us every time and everywhere. And I really hope that next year will be the year that we looking for. So thank you again for joining. If you have any questions, we'll give the microphone again to Stephen and Liz. If you have any question, you can just write it down or ask it now, and we will be happy to answer you, whether it's about the destination, about the COVID-19, whatever you have in your mind, please share it with us. Thank you again.
Okay, great. Thanks, Ibrahim. Yeah, I think I really do appreciate the team in Sarel because it is getting close to, I know, the end of the year. And every month they are very eager and very enthusiastic about sharing what is available in Israel and now got new routes and new places to visit. I think that's always going to be great. And I think it's good to have like the vaccines coming out. So it seems like it's going in the right direction for all of us. And I agree with Ibrahim. I think 2021 has to be better than 2020. I don't think anything can go worse than what we've been through this year. But it's great to see everyone is still around to experience this, but we believe that soon things will change. And of course, don't forget what Yinon also shared in the beginning. There is a lot more airlines coming through now to connect Indonesia with Israel. So it is a very important, any border that will be open for Indonesia market is going to be very important for the marketplace, because now we don't have the luxury of choosing, but we have to wait and see which borders are open and support those countries that open their borders first. Kalau ada pertanyaan, bisa tolong tulis dalam chat atau enggak bisa unmute and tanya langsung ke tim di SARL. Yeah, is there any questions that you want to ask? We have all the experts here. We have Ruben and Yinon and Ibrahim waiting to answer any questions that you might have. I noticed there's you were showing there was one hotel that you had along the coastline. How many hotels does Sarel own around in Israel? Can I ask?
Yeah, Sarel owns one hotel in Netanya, which is the Ramallah Netanya. It's a high-rise building next to the beach, 5-star, very big rooms. It's like small apartments. We are building now another hotel in the Sea of Galilee. If you know Capernaum, just across the road, there is a mountain slope going all the way up to Mount of Beatitudes. Probably the same location where Jesus fed the multitudes. You remember the miracle with the fish and the bread. So that is the location of our new hotel. It's currently under construction. It will be 300 rooms, 4-star deluxe, with biblical gardens around it, prayer paths, and amphitheater open air for groups to visit. And by the way, across the road in Capernaum, we have just finished building our newest restaurant, a tourist center. So we have a deck for the boat to come in the Sea of Galilee, a restaurant, some shops, toilets, and that's right on the beach of Capernaum. Sadly, because of the virus, we stopped everything. So it's ready, but we didn't open it yet. So once everything is finished, we will open it, and hopefully your groups will be the first ones to enjoy a good St. Peter fish lunch over there. We have another hotel in Germany, but that's in Germany, far away.
A bit too far.
So we are planning to have more.
That's great. Yeah. So if anyone is wondering how big Sarel is, they own hotels, buses, tours, an academy, studio. So they're a good company to work with, very strong backing, and been around for a long time. For those who haven't tried Sarel, please do so. I think it's going to be a good experience for you. Thank you. There's a question here from Pak Hadi. He's asking, big Christmas tree in Bethlehem, is it still put up this year?
I haven't seen it yet. Maybe
Ah.
Ibrahim, you saw it, or I don't know.
Yes, sir.
Christmas would be smaller this year, of course. No tourists from outside, only for locals. Ibrahim.
So probably it'll be local celebrations with under the COVID-19 limitations. Bethlehem is building the big tree in the Nativity Church hall, and also in Jerusalem there's a big tree at the Notre Dame Church, and also I've been 2 days ago in the Christian quarter at the Old City Park, and it's really amazing with all the Christmas decorations on the walls and on the shops. But sadly, it's only locals. There's no tourists. Usually, in this time of the year, that it's full of tourists that's coming to the Holy Land to celebrate Christmas here. But yeah, the people is still making a lot of things for Christmas, and I hope that you can see it maybe next year live. But this year it will be only for locals under the limitations of the COVID-19.
Okay, yeah. I think that must be quite similar to everywhere else. It'll be smaller than usual, but maybe it's a good time for us to enjoy Christmas in our own country with not so many people from outside. So it could be quite a nice personal Christmas for everyone. Yeah, any other questions? And nice to see you, Bu Joyce and Bu Santi. Thank you for turning on your camera. Nice to see you. And I always encourage anyone else who is on board, just turn on your camera. It's always good to see faces and see the reaction of people when when the presentation is on. It's nice. We should give a prize for those who does that in the future. So maybe in 2021 when we do our webinar, we have some spot prizes for you. Okay, so thank you.
By the way,
again.
Steven,
Yeah.
I would like to add that I will share the link now for the Sarel Academy in Indonesian, Bahasa Indonesia.
Nice.
So
Thank
there
you.
are about 25 videos of Israel in Indonesian, very good quality. So check it out.
Yeah. So there's some nice videos there. So please have a look at the chat. There's a link to those channels. And Bu Joyce is asking, when do you think the border will reopen for Holy Land?
Yeah, we ask this question ourselves. Nobody really knows, but we do estimate that very soon we will start seeing some groups coming from green countries. As far as I know, Indonesia is not there yet. But we tend to believe that by March, we would see everybody coming back. So hopefully springtime.
Wonderful. Yeah, so not too far away. It's if you're talking about March, it's only like almost 3 months. Yeah, quarter of a year. So that's good. I hope that answers your question, Bu, and hopefully you can start preparing for March and preparing to sell some good tours for Israel. Okay. Thank you for your nice comments. If there's no other question, if you have other questions, please, you can always reach out to Ibu Liz or myself, and you can pass it on to the team in Sarel, and I'm sure we can get that to you. So thank you for tuning in today. So keep in touch, and thank you, team in Sarel. If we don't see you before Christmas or New Year, we're going to say Happy Christmas and have an awesome New Year celebration with your family, and please take care of yourself, and we look forward to seeing you in 2021 for your next webinar. Will be in the new year. Wow, that's scary and exciting at the same time. Yeah, end of the year already. So thank you, everyone, and thank you.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you, everyone.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye. Shalom,
Yeah,
shalom.
thank you for joining today. Terima kasih. Sampai ketemu lagi. Have a safe Christmas and New Year. Yeah. Thank you, Yinon. Thank you, Ibrahim.
Thank you.
Yeah.
See you next year, Yinon and Ibrahim.
Thank you. Goodbye.
See you next year.
Bye.
Amen. Bye-bye.